Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from a perspective of race. So tonight, I'm gonna discuss a topic that I've actually avoided, since I returned to the YouTube market. It's something that I've mentioned sparingly. If you've watched enough of my videos, I've mentioned this idea, this fact sparingly. I'd say over the last, I don't know, 4 months or so, and I've just kind of not discussed this issue. But because of a video I recently saw in this past week, I says, okay, it's time to address this issue. Um, there have been a number of African American tourists who have traveled around the world, and some in very particular countries, whether it's Brazil or the Dominican Republic or wherever they might be. We know about this whole controversy with the term, with passport bros, right? Even though it's generally people look at it as groups of African American males traveling to other countries in pursuit of women, whether it be just sexual exploits, or whether they're looking for long-term relationships after, just frustration with relationships that they're having with American women. And, I made this very clear some time ago that, I've been traveling to Brazil for over 2 decades now. I started in the year 2000. I lived there for 9 years. So I would never label myself as a passport bro. I had been going to Brazil long before the term passport bro came about. And it was never my objective to be traveling to Brazil in pursuit of just women. My thing was learning the experiences of another Black community in another country, because most of us are familiar with the whole thing of the slave trade in the U.S., racism, white supremacy in the U.S. So I was fascinated by understanding the history of another group of African descendants in another country in the Americas, which is, that's what led me to start studying Brazil. Um, I know that there are many men who go to the country, and as I said, that some of them are there on business. They might work there because they work for a multinational company. You got people who work online from other countries. So, I'm familiar with that. I just there was never any particular label that I had for myself just traveling there. I was just interested in Brazil and the Black population, and it was fascinating to me to understand the similarities as well as the differences. Um, and over the course of the time that, I had started doing YouTube videos, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, and then I took an extended break, and I says I wanted to get back in this game. Um, I've talked a lot about race. I've talked a little bit about music. I've just, occurrences from Brazil, entertainment. I talk a little bit about, whatever might be a hot topic coming out of Brazil. I've looked at a lot of some of the relationship aspects, the interracial thing that's going on there. But I really, I've stayed clear of this topic of police violence against the Brazilian population, and specifically against the Black population, or some people prefer to say the Black and brown population. And I always have to make it clear that when we say Black and brown in Brazil, it doesn't mean the same thing as Black and brown in the U.S., where in the United States, you're generally talking about American descendants of slavery in the United States, versus when you say brown, you're talking about basically the Hispanic or Latino population. In Brazil, Black or preto really just means persons with darker skin color. We'll say more clearly Black looking people, versus pardos, which means brown or mixed. And for years, Afro-Brazilian activists have mixed the two populations together to say that, pretos and pardos equals the Black population, which would lead to about a figure of about 115 million people. But in recent years, I've had to back away from that because I do understand that you can't claim every brown person in Brazil as being black. There is a proportion of Pardus in Brazil who could be recognized as black, and that could be, I would estimate, just if I was a guessing man, I would say that would be anywhere from 25 to, I don't know, maybe 33%, maybe 40. Who's to say? It's really hard to gauge how many black people are within the Pardu population. I can just say that that population makes up about 95 million by itself, but we just can't say that every Pardu is black because, I recognize now that that's not necessarily so after having visited the country year after year and then having spent 9 years there. So, but so we're not talking about two distinct groups when we're talking about blacks and browns in Brazil. They're people, even the black people in Brazil have a certain level of mixture, but they're more clearly black, I would say. Whereas the Pardu population, like I said, it encompasses people of all sorts of mixed race, from people who look almost white to people who are just simply racially unidentifiable to people who are, for all intents and purposes, black. But they're all part of Brazilian society, so they're all part of the culture. Whereas in the United States, you have this Black American culture, and then you have the Latino Hispanic uh, population, and these are two different cultures. Okay, I want to get that. I want people to understand that from the beginning. So there was a video that I recently saw. There's been like I said, a few African American male tourists who have made headlines. They've grown quite a large audience with their exploits in Brazil. You remember I did a couple of videos about Austin Holloman, and I still have to get back into that situation because it's not open and shut. It's the interest in that story has kind of waned, but there's still some important details that I need to discuss about that. One of these days, I hope to get to it. And right around the time that the story about Austin Holloman was getting big, this was in mid to late January, when one day Brazil's social media was exploding about Austin Holloman. And some people were also talking about, they says, well, Austin Holloman is not even that bad when we consider another guy named Vibing with Fred. And I'm like, I didn't know who the guy was either. Um, so I'm not going to speak on Vibing with Fred because honestly, I haven't watched any of his videos until a few days ago. I became aware of Vibing with Fred's video where he talked about a very harrowing experience he had with Brazilian police. And I discovered this video courtesy of O'Shea Duke Jackson's channel. And so I wanted to just share my perspective on some of the things that he discussed. So let me before I get into what I'm gonna do, let me just discuss, or let me just review, feature a little bit of his video, because this is something that people need to hear. And as I said, I haven't spoken about this since I got back into YouTube, but the time has come. I have a huge quantity of articles talking about Afro Brazilians being killed by police in Brazil. Um, Feel free to go to blackbraziltoday.com, use the keywords military police, and you will find it. I mean, tell you the truth, I've stopped covering these videos for a while. But it's time to discuss a little bit more. So, but first, let's listen to a little bit of this video that was posted by Vibing with Fred, because I think it's a good introduction as we get into the video, or just talk about some of the stories where I've approached this issue, but I haven't talked about it on YouTube. So let's check out what he had to say in his own video.
What up, guys? Welcome back to another video. It's your boy Vibing with Fred, and you see the title of the video. This is not clickbait. This is not nothing for views. This is not nothing to play with. There's some serious shit. Literally, like, my fucking nerves are still going crazy right now. Not even 10 minutes ago, I was in an Uber coming from outside of the tourist zones. And I was coming from my girl's crib. So she doesn't live anywhere nearby. She stays like 30 minutes interior. Um, like I told you guys many times before, man. Once you leave the tourist areas, you pretty much on your own. Um, I mean, Salvador already, you don't run into too many people who speak English, and if you do, they're only here visiting from other parts of Brazil. With that being said, I'm leaving my girl's crib, right? So I get my Uber, and we're on the highway, and we pass by this this police car. It's not even a police. It's not even like the normal police. This is like military, like the highest grade of law enforcement here in Brazil. And different parts of Brazil, they have different types of uniforms, different types of cops. I've never seen these types of law enforcement. So we passed by, like, so we're driving, right? And they're on this side. So we passed by them, and there's a driver, there's a passenger, and there's a passenger in the back. So we obviously lock eyes. Me and the other guy in the back, I'm sitting in the back of the Uber, he's sitting in the back seat of the car, so we lock eyes. But we lock eyes for like not even 20 seconds, bro. Literally, the car pulls up, swerves at us and tells us to pull. I'm like, damn, bro, what the fuck? So the Uber is like, just relax, relax, relax. So we pull. He's like aggressively telling us to pull the car over, turn the car, blah blah blah. So I'm like, bro, what the fuck? Here we go. So the only thing that's going through my mind right now was just like, either this dude car was involved in some shit, or he just see a black guy in the back and just want to fucking harass, because they do that here in Brazil, bro. So I got my bag with me. I got my laptop in my bag. I got my keys. I got my phone. I got my portable charger. So I got all my shit with me, right? Because I was at my girl's crib. So they pull the car over, and they just like, turn the car off. Get out of the car. Mind you, they don't know that I'm American. They don't know shit, right? So we get out of the car. I got my chapstick, all this shit. I got my phone in my hand. I got my portable charger in my hand. Yeah, I got my chapstick. Bro, as soon as I open the fucking car door, bro, all you hear is ch-ch. I'm just like, oh shit. Like, the shit is getting real, bro. So I'm talking to the driver, like, bro, what the fuck? Like, what am I supposed to do, bro? Is he only referring to you? He talking to me? Like, I don't know what to fucking do. So I'm asking him, am I supposed to stay in the car? Am I supposed to get out of the car? So he's like, just get out of the car. So I'm standing by the car, and next thing you know, you hear all three of these dudes just cocking their shit. And I'm just like, bro, what the fuck is about to go down? Like, is this how it's about to end over some, whoever the fuck knows? Like, what is the issue, bro? So he talking to me. The other guy's on the wall. He's talking to me. He's saying some shit, and he's saying shit I ain't ever heard. So I'm just like, bro. So I'm looking at the Uber driver. He's like, just come over here, put your hands on the wall. So I'm up against the wall. I got my bag and shit right there by the car. He literally grabs my fucking bag and like dumping shit. I'm just like, bro, my laptop is right here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, yo. So he going through my bag, emptying shit out. He got my phone in there, in the car. He's like, what is that? I'm like, it's clearly a phone. And he go in the front seat, like they flipping the fucking the seats, undoing the seat. If I was this dude, if I was the driver of this car, bro, I would be pissed. Like they taking the seat apart, lifting the seat up. Like, I didn't even know the seats could do that shit. They lifting the seats up, looking under the shit. The front seat undoing shit. Like, bro, we was literally at this stop for like 45 minutes, dog. Traffic is backed up. They looking like, bro, what the fuck is going on? Like, literally, dude, dudes is like this close to my shit, bro. And these ain't no regular guns like in the States. They not no regular fucking pistols. These is like AR-15, M16s, M5s, shit like that, bro. This is like nothing to fucking play with, right? So he come over here talking to me, asking me, again, he don't even know that I'm American, bro. So he's asking me like, what are you doing in Sussuarana? Which is again the outside of the tourist shit. So I'm telling him, bro, like I forget all Portuguese at this point. Like I'm literally talking to dude in straight English. So clearly he not understanding shit I'm saying. So I was like, fuck it, bro. Like, so I'm like, so he going through my whole bag. So he think I'm bullshitting. He think that I'm truly Brazilian and I'm just pretending to be American. I'm just like, what sense does that make, right? So I'm telling him, eu não falo português, which means I don't speak Portuguese, which I do, but I'm telling him, like, bro, I don't speak Portuguese, right? So he's like, nah. So he's steady asking me. So I'm understanding at this point everything he asking me is like, where are you from? And I'm saying, Estados Unidos. I'm from the United States. It's like, why are you in Sussuarana? I'm like, my girlfriend lives there, bro. Like, I didn't know I wasn't. I didn't know I was not allowed to go. Right? I've been going for so long, bro. And they have Sussuarana has one of the largest favelas. Um, in the area, and she don't live in the favelas, but she lives in Sussuarana. So of course, you got Salvador is not probably is the blackest state in Bahia. When I say state, I mean the Bahia. Salvador especially is the largest black population in Brazil outside of Africa, bro. In Sussuarana is completely black. Like you in Bahia, Rio Vermelho, you see more white people than anything. Like you see a lot of black people, but you see a lot of white people too. Sussuarana, all black, right? All black. Ain't no white in sight, bruh. So, uh, long story short, he asking me, "What are you doing in Sussuarana?" So apparently, there's been this dude's car, which again is an everyday regular car that you're gonna see, um, wasn't is being involved and reported in some type of activities, criminal shit, robberies, shootings, shit like that, right? Drug shit. So they literally see a black dude in the back. They see a black guy driving or a light skinned guy driving. So they just assume possibly could be them, bro. They didn't hold back on shit. They was literally giving us the full fucking business, bro. If it was not, if it was not for him opening this pocket right here, bro. If it was not for him opening this front pocket, your boy probably would have been out of there. I'm not gonna lie, bro. This right here, the shit's giving me chills just thinking about it, bro.
All right, so I'm gonna cut his video right here. You can definitely go and check out the whole video. It looks like it's about 20 minutes, but I'm gonna cut it there because that's really the part of the video that I want to address. Wow, there's so much that everything that he said, I could just I understood, you know. Um, just so you understand, I'm repeating some of the stuff that he said because Salvador Bahia is the first city that I ever visited when I went to Brazil. It's one of those places where if you're if you're black and you're into the African diaspora, going to Salvador Bahia is one of those places you just have to go. Um, whether you have relatives in the South of the United States, Salvador just has that down home feel. It's a major metropolitan area. It is, but of all the cities that I've been to in Brazil, that's one of the blackest cities that you're going to find. Right? It's just immersed in black culture. It's like the black cultural center of the whole country. And as he said, it is like considered the blackest city in the Americas, right? Outside of Africa. He talked about there are what we call upper crust neighborhoods in Salvador, you know, and most of those areas are going to be populated by white Brazilians or people who are close enough to white to be considered white in Brazil. But then most of Salvador is just a very black city, you know. What else can I discuss before I move on? The point that the what he pointed out is about being pulled over by police, being harassed, having, you know, guns pulled on him. You know, I've heard scenario. This never happened to me, and I'm saying I'm fortunate about that. But I've read numerous stories over the years about Black Americans who, having been confronted by police in Brazil, they immediately use that American card. You know, like start speaking in English in order to, you know, distance yourself from how local blacks are treated in Brazil. You know, passport, speak English, and you just hope you can walk away with your life. And that's very serious because when you understand the statistics that I'm going to go through today, you see that how nervous that he was feeling, he had reason to feel that way because police in Brazil, I mean, like black bodies in Brazil fall like flies. Okay. We often talk about police violence in the United States and how black folks are most victimized in the country. Now, if you talk ratios, that's true, but just pure numbers from what I've seen, white people are killed more in the United States. But then again, there are a lot more white people in the U.S. than in there are a lot more white people in the United States than in there. There's a lot more white people in the United States than there are black people. So of course their numbers are going to be bigger. But racial, ratio, in terms of ratio, how many black people are killed per 100,000 is more in the United States, the same as Brazil. But the difference between the two is that police in Brazil kill far more people than in the United States. So I can totally understand where Vibing with Fred was feeling just totally nervous, like he just walked away with his life because it's something that happens every day. You know, Black Brazilian activists often say, "Look, we have a Trayvon Martin and a George Floyd happens here every single day." And when you look at some of the numbers of police violence in Brazil, how many people they kill, the numbers per year, just the numbers in one city. I remember when I first started, you know, the first few years I was in the Brazil, it was all about the culture and the music. Then in about 2003, I started reading these reports that were coming out, some of the major magazines like Veja. And I just remember seeing that in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, both the cities of Rio de Janeiro and the city of Sao Paulo, both their military police killed 2,000 people in 1 year. And that was just astounding to me because when I was looking at the numbers of all of the police in the entire United States, and I would see like, okay, you know, the United States would American police in the entire country, all of the United States would, you know, kill 3, 4, 500 people. And in 1 year, in two separate cities, Sao Paulo police and Rio de Janeiro police, they both of those cities killed over 2,000 people in 1 year. I was astounded. I was absolutely just shocked. I couldn't believe the number that I saw because when you make the comparison, it's like when you see numbers like that, it's almost like African Americans can't really complain about police violence because it's almost nothing in comparison to what goes on in Brazil. A lot of scholars, activists have pointed out that there's long been this how can we say this unwritten policy of the extermination of Black Brazilians because whether it's by now I've done stories where the victims of Black Brazilians being victims of everyday street crime. Just considering those numbers, and then you look at how many Black Brazilians are killed by police violence, and it's like one of the articles is entitled "Is there a genocide going on in Brazil?" You know, Brazil has always, you know, since at least the last century and a half, there's been this ideology that says we want to promote racial mixture in Brazil so that the darker skin elements of the population disappears. So the way I see it, you got two forms going on here to minimize, either take Black people out altogether or mix them out. Either way, the idea is we want to minimize brown and dark skin in the country. So they're promoting miscegenation, which is still huge in Brazil, a lot of mixing going on. Families, a lot are indoctrinated to have 2 to 3 generations in order to whiten their offspring. Then you have the police violence. Then you have the everyday violence. And it's like, wow, this looks like a planned effort of genocide in Brazil. But let me just present you with some of the data that I have so you get a full understanding of why vibing with Fred was, you could see that he was afraid for his life, because of that experience. So I'm going to go through a number of articles, but the first one I'm going to cover right here. I mean, look at what the title says. It says Brazilian police kill 5 times more than American police. On average, they kill 6 people per day. Now, this is just talking about the overall population. Okay. So let me take a look at this. And I got a number of different articles that I want to just touch on just the titles of the articles so you can get an idea how serious this is. And again, I've said this in a number of the articles that I've done over the years. If I wanted to devote just a blog to the violence of Brazilian police, I'd have plenty of material, but it just gets to the point where it's just very depressing to see such numbers, but it's not something that I can avoid. So I said I was going to cover this today. So let's get into this. This is a picture of military police patrol in the Mare favela of Rio de Janeiro. Now, he mentioned favela in Vibrant with Fred mentioned the word favela. And the favela are the slums. They're the sometimes makeshift homes that you find in the surrounding hills of major cities and even smaller cities, right? These are called favelas. People kind of like, for years, they lived off the radar. They particularly, you look at a city like Rio de Janeiro, and after slavery, the black population was just kind of forced out to the hills wherever they could find to reconstruct their lives. So today, you still have a large percentage. I'm not going to say a large percentage. I don't know. Maybe 1 out of 10 people in Brazil live in a favela. It's just, it's, and the intriguing thing about favelas is that from my experiences and, the few times that I've been there over the years, I didn't visit a lot of favelas, maybe in the first 5 years I did, but you find this wide gap of accessibility in favelas. You got the very poor. I've seen favelas where people got like dirt floors, up to favelas where people got the most modern technology. They have the boom boxes and they'll have PlayStations and stuff. It just depends. But you can't ignore this population. But one downside about living in a favela is that it attracts police violence. You have drug trade going on in favelas, so police will just indiscriminately go in through favelas and just riddle communities with bullets. There, of course, there's a small percentage of people that participate in, drug trafficking in the favelas, but the vast majority of people live in favelas are just everyday citizens. And these people end up getting killed because of police operations that go into the favelas, and they literally shoot first and ask questions later. Every day you seeing some protest of poor Brazilians. They'll set buses on fire. They're protesting, we want justice. These protests have been going on for years. And when you see the spectacular, just outrageous numbers of police violence in Brazil, you understand the frustration that people have. And they're even afraid to speak out because people speak out and they'll be targeted by the police. So there's a lot to uncover here. I'm going to focus on this one article, but I'm going to show you some other titles. If you want to go to the blog and blackbraziltoday.com and just punch in, go to the search menu and just punch in military police, and you're going to see a bunch of articles there that I've done over the years. So let me get into this. Sometimes the numbers say it all. You're not really surprised, are you? If you followed reports on this blog, you would remember seven shocking facts about the police in Brazil that will scare you. You would also know about the death squads within these police units. Now, when I say death squads, these are, we'll say, hired assassins within the military police. And besides the officialized police murder that can be accounted for, oftentimes these sharpshooters put on hoodies and they ride through communities, with their heads covered up. They're riding through with like on mopeds, and then you just hear about people getting killed. Nobody can say how many of the everyday murders that happen in Brazil are because of death squads, but I have a number of articles that have touched upon this, and they consider it exterminating the undesirables, the poor and black population. So death squads, that's a whole nother discussion, right? Because it's not officially connected to the numbers of homicides committed by military police, but it's that branch. One of the articles I had says that in every battalion of the military police in Brazil, there's this there's this element that just goes out and kills people. Anyway, let me keep it moving. Like I said, I'm not going to try to cover everything in one video, but the material is there. I've been covering it for years. I haven't done a piece on this in a while though. So besides the regular massacres, and massacres, that's a key word because you quite often hear reports from Rio or Sao Paulo or Salvador, Bahia, where Vibing with Fred was, and you just hear about police killing 10, 15, 20 people all at the same time, just like an extermination. So you hear about these massacres all the time. You would also know that this blog has called it genocide from the beginning. While it is true that the international media has basically been silent on the deadliness of Brazil's police forces, these outlandish numbers have been the rule for a number of years. So, as people in the United States have noted the increased militarization of police forces in that country due to a number of high profile murders, Brazil's police never stopped tactics used during the military dictatorship that supposedly ended nearly 30 years ago. Okay, so this article is a few years old. So the military dictatorship in Brazil ended in what, 1985. So it's almost 40 years ago, like 30, that's 38 years ago. As such, let the performance of Brazil's military police be a warning for how things could be under full militarization, i.e., war on the nation's own citizens. Brazilian police killed more than 6 people a day for the past 5 years, shows report. This article was written by Camila Maciel. On duty, Brazilian police killed 2,212 people in 2012. Show data from the 8th edition of the Anuário Brasileiro de Segurança Pública, which means the Brazilian Public Security Yearbook, produced by the NGO Fórum Brasileiro de Segurança Pública, meaning the Brazilian Forum on Public Safety. On average, there are 6.11 deaths per day. The number is lower than the previous year when 2,332 people were killed by police in Brazil. The complete document will be presented tomorrow in Sao Paulo. So whatever year I published this article. Despite the drop, the FBSP evaluates the difference does not indicate a trend of improvement or change. The organization points out that it's necessary to review the standard of performance of police forces. The forum was created in 2006 with the goal of building an environment of technical cooperation in the area of policing and public safety management. The yearbook provides data on the cost of violence, public safety spending, crime and violence statistics, police effectiveness, and prison population. So, you got the shock squad out in Sao Paulo, and this is a very popular street near the downtown region of Sao Paulo. This is military police in downtown Sao Paulo. The survey also reveals that in the last 5 years, police killed 9,691 people. The number is 5 times greater than that seen in the United States, where 7,584 people were killed by police action in the last 20 years. So get what that stat is saying. It's saying that in 5 years, Brazilian police killed what, 2,000 more people than all of the United States police in the last 20 years. Just let that sink in for a minute. If added cases in which the police are also acted out of service, the total comes to 11,197. The U.S. data show 11,090 deaths in 30 years. Again, let that sink in for a minute. In relation to the amount police killed, there was an increase in 2013 compared to the previous year. There were 490 deaths, 43 more than in 2012. The average in the country is 1.34 policemen murdered per day. Since 2009, 1,170 officers were killed. The majority of deaths, or 75.3%, occurred when they were not on duty. Rio de Janeiro is the state with the highest number of cases with 104, followed by Sao Paulo with 90, and the state of Pará with 51. So these are the numbers of police who are killed. All right. Another picture. This is from I can't remember what year this was. It's probably from 2013 or 14 in June in Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais. It's a state that's it's close to Rio and it's close to Sao Paulo. Like in it's considered the southeast of the country. The police confront anti-World Cup protesters. The World Cup in Brazil was held in 2014, so I'm assuming this picture is either from 2013 or 2014, because a lot of people are actually against all of the funding the Brazilian government was putting into the Brazil hosting that World Cup that year. As part of that yearbook report, FBSP presents the Índice de Confiança de Justiça Brasileira, which is the confidence index in the Brazilian justice or ICJ Brazil, calculated by the Fundação Getúlio Vargas, FGV. The study shows that only 33% of respondents say that they trust or trust very much in police work. The percentage is three times or three higher than in last year's points, but in the assessment of the organization, the number is still very low. 7,176 people were interviewed in 8 states. Police rated as more honest by the locals were from the southern state of Rio Grande do Sul, with 62% of respondents trust. Secondly, the agents of the state of Minas Gerais and Brazil's, we'll say, capital city, the federal district, Brasilia, with 57% of the population trusting in the integrity of the police force. In the national average, 51% believe that most police officers are honest. Amazonians, or people from the state of the Amazon, on the other hand, are more distrustful of the security forces. Police from the Amazon are considered honest by only 35% of respondents. It would be curious to break this down to see how trust in the police breaks down according to skin color or race. Older people, 62%, and those with higher education at 60%, are more likely to agree with the statement that most police are honest. Ethnic differences in relation to this question were also checked. Respondents who declare themselves branco or white are the largest proportion of who agree with the statement than among those who self-declare themselves negro, meaning black. So that the statistic isn't there, but if you talk to a middle-class white person in Brazil versus a lower-class black person, you're going to hear vastly different answers about how much they trust the police or don't trust the police. Most black people, from what I understand, do not trust the police in Brazil. And when you see the numbers, you can understand why. So let me get into a couple of the articles that I have here. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this because it would take me a couple of hours to get into this. But I just want to give you an idea of how long this has been going on and how serious the problem is. This article, now, Afro-Brazilian activists have been calling this genocide for some years. Abdias do Nascimento, longtime activist, passed away in 2011. He had a book that was re-released a few years ago. It was called The Genocide of the Black Brazilian. And he's been using it, up until his death, he used the term genocide for many years to describe Brazil's treatment of its black population. This article says the genocide continues. In 2019, blacks were 79% of those killed by Brazilian police. And as I said, constantly, I was always just seeing new stories about this black person or this black person's family are protesting because somebody in their family was killed by just police bullets. Sometimes those bullets are directly pointed at people who they deem to be part of drug trafficking, and sometimes people get in they get stray bullets, we'll say. Let's see what we have here. So these are just some of the titles of some of the articles that I have. This was a big story back in 2020. 2 black girls, 4 and 7, killed by gunfire in Rio. Military police claim no responsibility. Residents say otherwise. This is a constant in these stories. The police will say they did one thing, and the residents who saw the whole thing would say something else. And then some of those residents would be just totally afraid of speaking out for fear of retaliation. This was I can't even, like I said, I can't spend all of my time in this particular video talking about all of these because there's always some huge story about some people, black, most often black and brown, who are taken down by gun violence in police operations. 2019 in Sao Paulo funk dance, 9 people die after military police action. 8-year-old Agatha Felix was gunned down by military police fire. Okay. I could go on and on. This is just a few of the articles. If I was to continue to click, you'd see more and more. Video shows Rio military police open fire in pursuit of car killing young woman. Victim's mother wants end to police impunity. So this is Ironilda Mota da Silva and Sonia Vargas Mota, Raíssa's parents, they advocate for the end of police violence. Their daughter was killed. And let's say Raíssa Vargas Mota was killed last August in Rio after military police pursued the car she was in and opened fire. So when you hear stories like this, you can totally understand how Vibrant with Fred would feel when a military police car pulls up next to them and all of a sudden there's an exchange, pull over and, weapons are pulled. Happens every single day. Okay, so this is a story that I just talked about earlier. The two black girls who were killed, military police gunfire. This was a big story. In 2018, Rio man dies after being shot 3 times when his umbrella was mistaken for a rifle. Community residents protest and accuse military police of the murder. Okay, so this guy was taken out. They thought his umbrella was a weapon. Military police kill black teenagers who already surrendered with their hands up. Police threatened the life of a victim's mother and warned her not to speak to the press. Okay, I mean, what more? Let me see here. They had already surrendered with their hands up. I mean, as I said, the stories go on and on. This was a big story in 2015. The military police riddled a car with more than 100 shots at 5 black youth killed, and they killed 5 black youth sitting in a car in Rio. Governor says the case didn't involve racism. The governor at that time, that's a whole nother story because every governor that comes along in Rio, they seem to be more pro violence than the last. So this was I use the term bloodbath in a lot of my articles, but 5 young black men or teens were in a car that was riddled with 100 bullets from military police operation. You know, this is the funeral. You see the casket being carried here. 5 black youth shot dead. You know, mourners carry Brazilian flag with 50 symbolic holes in it. These are the young men who were fired upon 100 times sitting in a car, but car bullet, riddled with bullets. What more can I say? Genocidal assault continues in Rio. Military police riddle car with 20 bullets and leave 5 young black males dead. Okay, so this one, I have to look into this because one of the stories says 100 bullets and another one said 20. What was this one says 50? This one says 20 bullets. I'll have to revisit this article because sometimes what happens is that when a first report comes out, a story will say there were 20 shots fired. Then in another analysis, it'll say 50. Then another, it'll say 100. So anyway, I mean, whether it's 20 or it's 100, it's just saying that these 5 young black men lost their lives because the military police riddled their car with bullets. The genocide continues. This is from Salvador, Bahia, where Vibing with Fred is. The genocide continues. Military police killed 15 young black males in Operation Salvador, Bahia in a weekend. This was a pretty disgusting article also. The term here says reaja, meaning react. Okay, so then you just got black bodies spread out. This is a picture that was taken by an anonymous resident who looked down and saw all of these black men with their hands up. Victim or witness says victims of the bloodbath in Cabula, that's a region in Salvador, Bahia, they had already surrendered. And next thing you need, all you see is all these black bodies stretched out. And the sign says, this is a slogan in Bahia, reaja ou será morto. It means react or you will be killed. So then let's get into a couple other things that I want to point out here. This is an article from Forbes, and it says, study, U.S. police killings have increased since 1980, and Black Americans face the highest risk of death. Now, what does that mean? Black Americans were 3.5 times more likely than white people to be killed by police violence over the last 40 years. We find similar studies coming out of Brazil. One thing I want to point out about the U.S. is that studies are saying that the number of people being killed in the U.S. by police is actually undercounted. In this study, they're saying we estimate 30,800 deaths between 1980 and 2018, which represents 17,100 more than the initial release, which said 16 to 17,000. But even so, still, when you make the comparison, Brazil still is far ahead in terms of murder. Was justifiable homicide, police actions that lead to murder. These are some of the numbers from United States law enforcement officers from 2007 to 2021, and you see the numbers. So we go back to say, what's this, 2000? Okay, the light blue represents law enforcement officers. So here you have 2013, 471 people were killed by American police. The next year, 450, 457. Let's see here. It falls down to 168 by 2021. Okay, so these are the numbers in the United States, for, sometime, mostly around the fours before it starts dropping a little bit here from 2013 to 2021. So then let's look at numbers coming out of Brazil. These are people killed by police, numbers from Brazil. So in 2015, you've got 3,300, 2016, 4,200, 2017, 5,200. The years go on, they move into the 6,000s. So you got 6,000. Just let's look at this last year. You got 2021 in Brazil, 6,000 people were killed in police actions. In 2021 in the United States, it was 168. Just astounding the difference there. Let's see. Similar to what I just said about Black Americans are 3.5 times more likely than white Americans to be killed by police violence. And in Brazil, Black death in police actions in Brazil is 2.8 times larger than white Brazilians. So you have something very similar here. You know, like he said, Vibrant Refred talked about the weapons that he saw when he got pulled over in that car. Again, these are some of the names of the articles that I have. Black genocide is real. Deaths of young blacks by firearm grows 428%. These are all protests against a lot of big stories come out where black people are either harassed or beaten up or killed in supermarkets. Is there a black genocide going on in Brazil? Considering a number of important factors, the answer may be surprising. This was a protest march against black genocide, galvanizes 50,000 people throughout Brazil, but where is the media coverage? This is something that I've talked a lot about. Uh, the killing of a black person in the United States gets a lot more international press than in Brazil, where it happens every day, and you don't even really hear that much about it. All right. Um, I've talked about how Brazilians have adopted the slogan Black Lives Matter, which you see here, Vidas Negras também importam, I mean, Black Lives Matter also, right? Most of the time it's shortened to just say Vidas Negras importam, an exact translation of Black Lives Matter. These are just some more articles. Just, endless reports. After the brutal murder of 5 black males by police, Rio de Janeiro's Madureira neighborhood takes to the streets. They call for the end of extermination of black youth. 2 more black lives that didn't seem to matter. This was another big story in Rio de Janeiro. 24-year-old model designer Kathleen Romeo struck down during police action. She was 14 weeks pregnant. Okay. Another big story. Where does it end? Let me see. This story is, let me get to the title here. Okay, so this is the actual story that I had from 2018. Is there a black genocide going on in Brazil? I mean, just from what I've presented to this point, what do you think? What conclusion would you come to by some of these articles here? This is another big story that a lot of Afro-Brazilian population and militants were using this statistic, saying, according to a study, every 23 minutes, a black youth is murdered in Brazil. Okay. What is the next one? This is just a story about just overall violence in Brazil. Between the years 2010 and 2002 and 2010, more than 272,000 Afro-Brazilians were murdered. Numbers equal that to a country that's at war. Rates of murder rise for blacks while falling for whites. Okay. Again, this number is going to include pretos and pardos. This is a mixture of black and brown. We'll just say the non-white population. This is another statistic. I mean, sometimes Brazilians will ask me, why do I focus on the negative things about Brazil? And it's okay. People are more likely to travel to Brazil now, particularly African-American males. So these are statistics that people should be aware of. If you see, look, in 2019, 5,804 people were killed in Brazil versus by police. Number of people killed by police in Brazil in 2019, 5,804 versus 946 in the United States. That's like 6 times more. Okay. Many of us remember the Trayvon Martin story that happened in, I think that was in Florida. I forget what year that was. But this was a huge story in Brazil. The 14-year-old kid named João Pedro Matos Pinto. He was killed in a police operation in São Gonçalo, rather, state of Rio. Okay. If you Google his name, you'll see all types of articles. I mean, police invaded his neighborhood, and the bullets that they shot went straight through his house and struck this 14-year-old kid. That's the funeral. This is a picture. This is the type of picture you always see coming out of Brazil. A grieving father over the casket of his son. Right. It's far too normalized in Brazil. The numbers can always be played with. So whether it's 5 or 6 people getting killed every day, or they say police in Brazil kill 5 or 6 times more than American police. According to this number here, this article, shocking. Brazilian police killed 17 times the number of black people than American police killed in 2019. I will have to go into this article in order to address the discrepancy here. But this is what they're finding here. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'll get into this particular article in a whole separate audio, or like I said, this video will go on for about 2 hours if I was to cover everything else. All of these the articles that I'm just referencing here. Again, the study, black people were 3 times more likely than white people to be killed by police. That's in the United States. So you see in both sides, whether it's Brazil or the United States, black people are victimized 3.5 times more than whites in the United States, and 2.8 times more in Brazil, blacks versus whites. So we see a similar problem for the black community in both of these countries. The difference is that Brazil's military police are far more lethal than police in the United States. So this is the story I wanted to put out today, because if people want to visit Brazil, these are just some of the realities that you have to deal with. Brazil is not a place to be playing around. I would just say, if you ever get confronted by police, maybe you should immediately start speaking English. Maybe you should walk around with your passport. Brazil is not a place to be playing with. Like he said, once you leave out of the tourist areas, you're kind of on your own. You have to carry yourself as an upstanding citizen or just a visitor. And I hate to say to use your Americanism, but certainly in the case of vibing with Fred, perhaps that he was American might have saved his life that particular night, or afternoon, or whatever time of day that happened. So I'm going to end this video here. There's so many more that I can cover, and perhaps in the future I'll start covering more of these articles, because if you want to go to Brazil, this is just a reality that you have to deal with. Okay. It seems to me that, one of the things that I've long said is that Brazilians, when the question of racism comes up, they'll often talk about how, Brazil isn't racist like the United States because there you guys had the KKK, right? But I did a report some years ago on another website, and I just showed you can't, even if you consider the murders by the KKK at their most violent, there's no comparison, between the murders of black Brazilians just by the military police alone. There's no comparison. So I'm saying you don't need, say, a KKK in Brazil, because the police, the security forces in Brazil are far more likely than ever. The numbers, when you compare the numbers between the Brazil and the United States, then when you consider something else, like I said, death squads, oftentimes off-duty military police just indiscriminately kill black and brown people. So I question that. How do you look at saying, because you didn't have a KKK, an official KKK in Brazil, that it's less racist? It sounds absurd when you see how many black people get murdered versus just everyday street violence, as well as violence of police actions that, drop black bodies onto the ground. So I'm going to end this here. Definitely want to hear your comments, what you think about this. Consider subscribing to the channel. Click the like button, hit that notification bell, so you can be alerted when my new videos come out. And with that said, I do definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about this video, and I'm gonna catch up with you when I put another one up. Okay.